Alright, let's take a look at a universe portrayed within a video game. And, well, we're going pretty simple with this one. We're going Keystone Kapers. Alright, let's talk about Keystone Kapers. I actually recorded another video talking about Keystone Kapers. And I want to edit it in the future. I just wanted to talk about Keystone Kapers now, and I didn't feel like editing that video, so I'm just going to do a prequel to that video. In that other video, I just kind of talk about how, it was a game that I always wanted as soon as I saw it, even though it was pretty late into the 8-bit era, I think, when I saw it. I think the 16-bit era may have already started by the time I saw one of my friends playing it. And also, but I even talk about the interesting, just the way Activision manufacture their cartridges. What's kind of cool about the Activision cartridges is they kind of stack. Let's see. Here's Star Master and Ghostbusters, and you just kind of like set one on top of here. You line them up so the little, Could grab a couple more, but I just grabbed these ones to have on hand. Yeah, it was kind of cool about the Activision cartridges. A little less likely to slip off your shelf, I guess. I don't know how many you'd stack on there before they'd start to fall, but... But I'm going to stay away from that. I just want to take a look at Keystone Kapers because I like that game. And it's such a simple world being portrayed within it. When I look at like old video games, for example, Pong, some people, well, Atari definitely wants you to think of Pong as the original video game, as if it's the first video game. And there's kind of a bit more to the video game history than that, but looking at Pong, because it is such a primitive game, and because I find sports kind of boring, when I look at Pong, I just think, well, instead of thinking it's a ping pong ball bouncing back and forth between paddles, I like to think of it as a unit of energy bouncing around inside of a particle, causing it to have mass if it moves, And that might be a little too esoteric for anybody. And so I'd get even more esoteric when I think about, I kind of like to look at it because it's one of the most primitive video games, as if you're looking into, I was speaking of looking into a game, when I played Keystone Kapers there, I kind of forgot about the time limit and I get kind of lazy playing around with the environment, but I managed to get that handled within the appropriate amount of time. But anyway, back to what I said. I like to think of it as looking back into the first absolute unit of time in between the first instant of the Big Bang, and the first instant after. I believe it's referred to as the Planck scale, but I thought I heard somebody pronounce it the Planck scale once. But anyway, on that Planck scale, in either a hyperspace dimension or a subspace dimension being used to play out causality instead of the normal timeline, I like to think of it as looking into that beginning moment of space and time, where the universe is about to expand forward, and whichever side of the Pong game wins determines whether you're going to get a matter universe or an antimatter universe, and how many times the little pixel bounce back and forth could establish how much mass there's going to be in the universe. Yeah, I know I'm getting into esoteric science stuff, and I'm trying to make a Pong game into creation of the universe story, or a way of looking at the possibilities of space and time. But when you think about Pong, that's probably not what a lot of people think of, but it is one of the most primitive and crude video games ever. And when you look at Keystone Kapers, you have something from the early ages of video games. It's considered the second generation of video games. The Pong clones, including the Magnavox Odyssey, which came out before Pong, are generally considered to be the first generation of video games. But when you combine the first and second generations of video games, like the Atari Pong devices, the Coleco Telstar Alpha, the Mattel Electronics Auto Race, and then later game systems like the Mattel Electronics intelligent television, and the Atari 2600, and the Fairchild Channel F, and the ColecoVision, and the Odyssey 2. When you take a look at all that stuff, all those together to me are the original video game consoles. And really, when you think of a console, you want to have some sort of interchangeable media, But then again, a dedicated console is kind of still a console. And Keystone Kapers is part of that. It was an Activision game on the Atari 2600, and it's such a simple concept. I mean, there's just something fun about it. I like the realism of it in its simple, crude way. And, you're playing as a cop trying to chase down a criminal who's been stealing stuff in a mall. And just to go over the top with it, the guy who's the thief is kind of dressed in prison clothing. He's wearing the black and white stripes. Yeah, that's not over the top. But then again, the Keystone Cop, it's based on Keystone Cops, the concept, the name anyway, but I called him a Keystone Cop. He's really technically more of a Keystone mall security guard, I think. Or maybe he just chased the criminal into the mall. I don't know. But, I mean, things get kind of wacky. The stuff that you're dodging and running away from in the mall is kind of, over the top. I mean, yeah, sure, shopping carts are going to be really there, and somebody could fly a remote control airplane at you. But it does get a little bit over the top. But still, I don't know. I just couldn't help but find something kind of fun and enjoyable about that game. Both the realism, everything from the skyline, when you see out above the mall, to just the idea of running through a mall, chasing down somebody, So what can I say? I just thought this game was fun the first time I saw it, and it was a game that I had a desire to purchase. And years later, perhaps that could be considered a reason to talk about something in addition to Keystone Kapers. Years later, I did get the Activision Classics special package of games on CD for the personal computer, and I take a look at one of those collections, or the specific collection that I'm talking about right now, when I talk about the retro, I was going to say Retrobit, but it's actually RetroLink, the RetroLink Sega Saturn style controller. So that could be an excuse to take a look at one of my other videos. So I did eventually get Keystone Kapers on a disc that I could play on the computer, but it was even longer after that before I actually got a cartridge for the Atari 2600. And this was a game that won me over, both for how simple it was and just kind of fun. And what it portrays, especially in the earlier levels, isn't all that unrealistic. A cop chasing a criminal through a mall. And you have elevators and escalators, and you decide which way you want to go, and you have to catch him before he gets away. And there's a time limit. And yeah. But anyway, there I've rambled on about Keystone Kapers. So anyway, that's what I have to say about Keystone Kapers for the time being. And if you want to talk about anything else or hear me ramble on about anything else remotely related to Keystone Kapers, well, the RetroLink USB Sega Saturn style controller for the personal computers. When I talked about that, I tested the Activision Atari 2600 Action Pack 2 with that controller, and unfortunately the sound... The sound chip in my computer, the sound chip in just about every computer I ever had, if not every one of my computers. I don't think I've ever had a computer with a compatible sound chip, so I've never gotten proper audio from it. But, I actually take a look at Keystone Kapers there as well. So that's just an excuse to take a look at that video, because that's an awesome video game controller. That's an awesome video game controller, and I use it to play Keystone Kapers on the personal computer. But I was really here to talk about Keystone Kapers, and I'm just saying that there's another video I did that that's out there that you might want to check out. But yeah, I've got other videos out there. You can feel free to check them out if you found this remotely interesting. Me rambling on about video games and trying to find high-end sciencey concepts to talk about video games and etc., whatever. You get where I'm coming at from this. If you found this video interesting whatsoever, I'm just saying you might want to consider checking out some of my other videos. And maybe after watching a few more seconds of video game footage, you might want to consider selecting one of my other videos to watch. Because there's other videos out there in the UNIMULTIVERSE archives.